So I am going to break the Guinness Book of World Record 24-hour pull-up record, which is 7,600 pull-ups in one day. There's kind of a long reason behind why I chose that in particular. First, I wanted to raise awareness for a cause that means a lot to me, which I can kind of get into here in a minute. I was always drawn to doing so in a way that was physical, just because of my background growing up in the Brand X method and having a base of physical literacy that allowed me to kind of choose whatever direction and path I wanted to take. I've always kind of been gymnastically inclined. It's been the thing that came the easiest for me. And pull-ups, for some reason, you call me crazy, but when I heard the initial record 4 years ago when David Goggins had it, I just thought to myself, I can beat that. I don't know why, but I just thought that. Now, the cause that really means a ton to me is an organization called Lifesong for Orphans. And the reason I'm raising money for Lifesong for Orphans is my youngest daughter. I adopted my youngest daughter. There were a ton of legal processes that came into play. I got my youngest daughter at 4 days old. From the time I had her in my home to 5 months, I was told that her circumstances were such that we'd get to adopt her. And at 5 months, we got a call. There's been an adoption agency that has her older half-brother in Oregon. They've moved for custody of her, and that we were going to have to say goodbye and that we would never see her again, and they would come on Monday. So that was Friday evening. Probably one of the worst moments of my life, hearing those words, because at this point she's my daughter. I've raised her from 4 days old to 5 months, held her in my arms every night, fed her every night. I loved her and had already thought about the future and what it might hold with her. So we filed an injunction, got a lawyer, went through with essentially liquidating all my assets at that point, went all in. That lawyer ended up winning us the case, winning us custody of our daughter, and was left with a pretty financially crippling bill at the end of that. Lifesong looked at our story and they said, here is the money to repay the loan that you have for your legal fees. And they paid it in full, and that's what they do for people. They help facilitate adoption or help families recuperate, because it is financially tough. And my goal in this whole thing and breaking the pull-up record is to bring some awareness to that cause and to potentially raise enough money for them that I could be a blessing in the way that they were a blessing to me, to other people. Initially, the first day, I texted you guys first and I just said, hey, you think I can do it? My dad said yes, and he had a very serious, but it's going to take a lot of training, and you could potentially injure yourself if you don't do this in the correct fashion, so we have to be systematic. You have to know you're going to do it when you do it. My mom said, please don't, and have you drank enough water? Typical mom response, right? She's like, are you feeling okay? Because this doesn't sound like the right frame of mind. But eventually she got partially on board. I reached out to Keegan and said, I'm going to do this. How do I make sure that my shoulders don't fall off of my body, essentially? My dad had a really systematic way of breaking down the pull-ups. So the first month, the goal was to do the entire volume that I was going to do in a day over a month. Every day it was 200, 300, 400, that to accumulate over a month, 8,000. And then the next month, the goal was to do that in 3 weeks. And then the month after that, the goal was to do that in 2 weeks. And the month after that, the goal was to do that in a week. The only one that I haven't done at this point was the 8,000 in 1 week, but I did do 10 hours in a day, and I did 4,378 that day. That said, the type of training I've been doing believe it or not, has been almost as much accessory work as it has been pull-ups. So I've been doing, 2 or 3 pull-ups to every rep of a banded pull apart, a banded chest pull. Usually it's not heavily loaded accessory work. It's light work that focuses on activation of musculature to help seat my shoulder in the right position. I have a 4-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old daughter, and balancing that with a full workload, finding the time to do something that's going to take 24 hours in an event is tough, because most people, if you can find an hour to train a day, that's really good, right? If I find an hour, that's 1/24 of what I'm going to be doing volume-wise, so it's really not good to just have an hour. I'm going to have more than that most of the time. So what I've found is kind of trying to balance and niche out those times throughout the day has been the best way to train for it. A typical training day has looked like to me, I get up in the morning, I coach from 5 a.m. to 9:30. I usually eat my lunch right at 9:30. Then from about 9:45 to 12, I take that time to dedicate to training. Then immediately following that training, I coach class again, pick up my daughters. I'm with my daughters from 2:30 to 5 p.m. Then I drop them back off at their mom's. Usually I go and I train another hour. I think one of the things that is unique about the Brannock's method in general and my training and my background is that I was never taught to put limitations on my capacity or on myself. I was taught to approach difficult challenges with reverence, but I was never taught to say to myself, I don't think I can do that. I was taught to say, that is an extremely difficult task. That's going to take a lot of work, but I can do it. And I've always believed that if I can set my mind to something, it may take me 10 years, it may take me 8 months like this has. I do believe that I'm, aside from all of the training, I do believe I'm physically made to be better at this task than most people. I've always had a stronger upper body. I have a relatively short wingspan, so as far as range of motion goes, it's a little bit easier for me to do pull-ups. So I feel like the training for this, I just had the mindset like, you've been good at this stuff in the past. You don't really know what, there's an unknown element of what this volume will do to you, but it's not something that you can't overcome and you can't do.